Elena Petrov stood at the edge of the military training camp, her worn leather boots sinking slightly into the muddy ground. The October rain had turned the entire base into a mess of puddles and slippery paths. She clutched her acceptance letter tightly, the paper now damp from her sweaty palms and the drizzling rain above. At 23, Elena had already lived through more hardship than most people twice her age. Her small village had been destroyed in the war 2 years ago. She watched her father die defending their home, and her mother had passed away from illness just months later. Elena was alone in the world, with nothing left except an burning desire for justice and a rifle her grandfather had taught her to use when she was just 12 years old. The training camp buzzed with activity. Dozens of young men marched in formation, their boots hitting the ground in perfect rhythm. Sergeants shouted orders across the field, and the sound of gunfire echoed from the shooting range in the distance. Elena took a deep breath and walked toward the main building, where she was supposed to report for duty. As she approached the entrance, a group of soldiers noticed her. They were standing near the door, smoking cigarettes and talking loudly about their weekend plans. When they saw Elena walking toward them with her small backpack and determined expression, their conversation stopped. "Hey, look what we have here," said a tall soldier with a thick mustache. His name tag read Kozlov. "Did someone's girlfriend get lost trying to find the kitchen?" The other soldiers burst into laughter. Elena felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but she kept walking. She had expected this kind of treatment. In her country, women were not commonly seen in military roles, especially not in combat positions. "Excuse me," Elena said politely, trying to step around them to reach the door. Wait, another soldier called out. This one was shorter but had broad shoulders and a mean smile. "Are you here to clean the barracks? Because I have some dirty laundry that needs attention." More laughter erupted from the group. Elena stopped walking and turned to face them directly. Her grandmother had always told her that respect was earned, not given, and she would have to prove herself every single day. "I'm here for sniper training," Elena said clearly, her voice steady despite the nervousness she felt inside. The laughter became even louder. Kozlov slapped his knee and wiped tears from his eyes. "Sniper training? That's the funniest thing I've heard all week. Little girl, do you even know which end of a rifle the bullet comes out of? Maybe she thinks this is summer camp," the shorter soldier added. "Someone should tell her that we don't make friendship bracelets here." Elena felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. Getting into a fight on her first day would only prove their point. Instead, she looked each of them in the eye and spoke with quiet confidence. "I've been shooting since I was 12 years old. I can hit a target at 800 meters in heavy wind. And I'm here because my country needs every capable soldier it can get, regardless of gender." The soldiers exchanged glances, their smiles fading slightly. They weren't expecting such a direct response from someone they assumed would be easily intimidated. "Big words from someone who probably couldn't carry a full pack for 5 kilometers, Kozlov said, but his voice had lost some of its mocking tone. Before Elena could respond, a sharp whistle cut through the air. "What's going on here?" A voice boomed from behind the group. The soldiers immediately straightened up and turned around. A sergeant was approaching, his uniform perfectly pressed and his expression stern. The name tag on his chest read Volkov, and Elena could tell immediately that he was someone who commanded respect. "Nothing, Sergeant," Kozlov said quickly. "Just welcoming the new recruit." Sergeant Volkov looked at Elena, then at the group of soldiers. His experienced eyes seemed to take in the entire situation in just a few seconds. "Is that so?" he said slowly. "Well, since you're also interested in helping new recruits, you can spend the rest of the afternoon cleaning the latrines." All of them. The soldiers' faces fell. They had clearly been hoping to spend their free time doing something much more pleasant. "But Sergeant..." The shorter soldier began to protest. "Did I stutter?" Volkov's voice was like ice. "Move out now." The group of soldiers hurried away, casting resentful glances back at Elena as they left. She felt a mixture of gratitude and worry. She was glad that Sergeant Volkov had intervened, but she knew that his protection would only make the other soldiers resent her more. "Thank you, Sergeant," Elena said. Volkov studied her carefully. "Don't thank me yet, recruit." What those idiots said might have been rude, but they weren't entirely wrong about one thing. This training is going to be harder than anything you've ever experienced. Most of the men who start this program don't finish it. Are you sure you're ready for that? Elena met his gaze without flinching. I'm ready, Sergeant. I have to be. Volkov nodded slowly. We'll see. Report to the quartermaster for your gear, then find bunk 47 in Barracks C. Training starts at 500 tomorrow. Don't be late. As Elena walked away to collect her equipment, she could feel eyes watching her from every direction. Some of the stares were curious, others were dismissive, and a few seemed openly hostile. She realized that proving herself to one sergeant was just the beginning. She would have to earn the respect of every single person on this base one day at a time. That night, as she lay in her narrow bunk surrounded by the sounds of snoring soldiers, Elena stared at the ceiling and thought about her father. He had always believed in her, even when others didn't. Tomorrow, she would begin the journey to become the soldier he had always known she could be. The alarm clock screamed at 4:45 a.m., but Elena was already awake. She had barely slept, her mind racing with thoughts about the day ahead. Around her, the other recruits groaned and stumbled out of their bunks, cursing the early hour. Elena quietly gathered her gear and headed to the bathroom to get ready. When she arrived at the training ground 15 minutes early, she was surprised to find she wasn't alone. Sergeant Volkov was already there, checking equipment and making notes on a clipboard. He looked up when he heard her footsteps. Early bird, I see, he said. That's good. Punctuality will keep you alive in the field. Elena nodded and took her place in the formation area. Slowly, other recruits began to arrive. Some looked alert and ready. Others appeared to be sleepwalking. The group that had mocked her the day before shuffled in just before 5 a.m., clearly unhappy about their punishment duty from the previous afternoon. Listen up. Volkov's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. Today we begin weapons training. For the next 6 weeks you will learn to shoot accurately under pressure, in all weather conditions and at various distances. Some of you think you already know how to shoot because you went hunting with your daddy. Forget everything you think you know. We're starting from scratch. He gestured toward a table covered with different types of rifles. These are the tools that will keep you alive and help you complete your missions. Treat them with respect, maintain them properly, and they will never let you down. Neglect them and they might get you killed. The training began with basic rifle assembly and disassembly. Elena had done this countless times with her grandfather's old hunting rifle. But these military weapons were more complex. She watched carefully as the instructor demonstrated each step, making mental notes about the differences. As they worked through the exercises, Elena noticed that several of the male recruits were struggling with the technical aspects. Their hands fumbled with the small parts, and they had to ask for help multiple times. Elena completed her assembly quickly and correctly, then quietly helped a nervous-looking recruit named Dmitri, who was sitting next to her. Thanks, Dmitri whispered gratefully. He was young, maybe 19, with soft features that suggested he had never been far from home before. Kozlov, the tall soldier who had mocked Elena the day before, overheard this exchange. Look at that, he said loudly enough for others to hear. The girl is already playing mommy, helping the weak ones. Elena ignored the comment and continued with her work. She had learned long ago that responding to every provocation would only waste her energy. The morning progressed to the shooting range. This was the moment Elena had been both anticipating and dreading. She knew she was a good shot, but proving it in front of everyone would either earn her some respect or make her an even bigger target for harassment. Sergeant Volkov explained the exercise. You'll each take 10 shots at targets placed 300 meters away. This is not about speed today. Focus on accuracy and technique. We'll work on quick shooting later in the program. The recruits took turns stepping up to the firing line. The results were mixed. Some hit the target consistently, others missed completely, and a few managed respectable groupings. When it was Elena's turn, she could feel every eye on the range watching her. She took her position, adjusted her stance, and looked through the scope. The target seemed small in the distance, but Elena had shot at much longer ranges before. She controlled her breathing, just as her grandfather had taught her, and gently squeezed the trigger. The first shot hit the target dead center. Elena made a small adjustment and fired again. Another perfect hit. By the time she had fired all 10 rounds, she had created a tight grouping right in the center of the target that was better than anyone else had achieved that day. The shooting range fell silent. Even Volkov raised his eyebrows in surprise. Elena calmly set down her rifle and stepped back from the firing line, her heart pounding but her expression calm. Well, Volkov said after examining her target through binoculars. It seems we have a natural marksman in our group, the other recruits murmured among themselves. Some seemed impressed, others looked skeptical, as if they suspected some kind of trick or luck. Kozlov spoke up from the back of the group. One good round doesn't mean anything. Let's see her do it again when she's tired, cold, and under pressure. Elena turned to face him directly. I'm ready whenever you are. Volkov held up a hand to prevent the situation from escalating. There will be plenty of opportunities to test everyone's skills under difficult conditions. For now, let's continue with the training schedule. The rest of the day included physical fitness training, tactical exercises, and classroom instruction about ballistics and weather conditions. Elena performed well in all areas, but she was careful not to show off or make her abilities too obvious. She had learned that standing out could be just as dangerous as falling behind. During lunch, she sat alone at a corner table, eating her rations quietly while reviewing her notes from the morning's lessons. She noticed that Dmitri, the young recruit she had helped earlier, was also sitting alone and looking miserable. After finishing her meal, Elena walked over to his table. Mind if I sit down? Dmitri looked up in surprise. You want to sit with me? But everyone's already talking about how good you are. Why would you want to associate with someone who can barely hit the broadside of a barn? Elena sat down anyway. Because we're all here for the same reason, and because helping each other is how we all get better. They talked quietly about the training, and Elena shared some tips her grandfather had taught her about breathing and stance. Dmitri listened intently, grateful for the advice and the company. From across the cafeteria, Elena could see Kozlov and his friends watching them. They were clearly planning something, but Elena didn't let it worry her. She had dealt with bullies before, and she knew that showing fear would only make things worse. That afternoon brought more shooting practice, this time at moving targets. Elena continued to perform exceptionally well, hitting targets that many of the male recruits missed entirely. With each successful shot, she could see the mixture of respect and resentment growing in the eyes of her fellow trainees. As the day ended and the recruits were dismissed to their barracks, Elena felt cautiously optimistic. She had survived her first full day of training and had even started to make a friend, but she also knew that her success would make her a target for those who couldn't accept that a woman might be better than them at something they considered a man's job. Walking back to the barracks, Elena overheard fragments of conversations from other recruits. Some were praising her skills, others were making crude jokes about women with guns, and a few were openly questioning whether she belonged there at all. As she prepared for bed that night, Elena reflected on the day's events. She had proven that she could shoot as well as anyone in the program, but she also realized that technical skill was only part of what she would need to succeed. The real challenge would be earning the trust and respect of people who had already decided that she didn't belong there. 3 weeks into training, Elena had established herself as one of the top shooters in the program. Her accuracy was consistently better than most of her male counterparts, and she had even started helping other recruits improve their technique. However, this success came with a price. The harassment from certain members of her unit had only intensified. It started with small things. Elena would find her gear mysteriously moved or hidden. Her bunk would be short-sheeted, or someone would put salt in her coffee. She endured these pranks silently, knowing that complaining would only make her look weak and give her tormentors more satisfaction. Kozlov had become the unofficial leader of the group that seemed determined to make Elena's life difficult. He had recruited several other recruits who resented her success and felt threatened by the possibility that a woman might outperform them. They called themselves the traditionalists and made no secret of their belief that women had no place in combat roles. The situation came to a head during a particularly challenging training exercise. The recruits were required to hit targets at 600 meters while lying in muddy trenches, with sergeants creating noise and distractions to simulate battlefield conditions. It was exactly the kind of test Kozlov had been waiting for, an opportunity to see Elena fail under pressure. Elena took her position in the trench, which was filled with cold, murky water that soaked through her uniform immediately. Rain had been falling for 2 days straight, and the conditions were miserable. The wind was gusting unpredictably, making long-distance shots extremely difficult. As she settled into position and began to line up her first shot, Elena heard Kozlov's voice from the trench next to her. Hey, princess, maybe you should call for your manicurist. This mud might chip your nail polish. His friend snickered, and Elena felt her concentration waver for just a moment. She took a deep breath and focused on the target. The key was to time the shot between wind gusts and account for the way the rain would affect the bullet's trajectory. Her first shot hit the target, but not in the center ring. It was still a good shot under the difficult conditions, but Elena knew she could do better. She adjusted her position slightly and prepared for the second shot. This time, Kozlov began making even more disruptive comments. I bet she learned to shoot by playing with toy guns at her little tea parties. Probably had pink bullets too. Elena forced herself to block out the noise. She had learned this technique from her grandfather, who used to have her practice shooting while he banged pots and pans together. A good sniper, he had told her, can hit their target even if the world is falling apart around them. Her second shot hit dead center. So did her third, fourth, and fifth. With each perfect shot, Kozlov's comments became more desperate and mean-spirited. Sergeant Volkov had been watching the exercise carefully. He noticed Elena's exceptional performance under difficult conditions, but he also observed the harassment she was enduring. After the exercise was complete and the scores were tallied, he called Elena aside. "Outstanding shooting today, Petrov," he said. "Those were some of the best shots I've seen in challenging weather conditions." "Thank you, Sergeant," Elena replied. Volkov studied her carefully. "I've also noticed that some of your fellow recruits seem to be having trouble focusing on their own performance. They appear to be more interested in your business than their own." Elena wasn't sure how to respond. She didn't want to be seen as a complainer, but she also knew that Volkov was giving her an opening to discuss the harassment. "I can handle whatever they dish out." "Sergeant," she said finally. "I'm sure you can," Volkov replied, "but the question is whether they can handle what you're dishing out. Your performance is making some people very uncomfortable, and uncomfortable people sometimes do stupid things." That evening, Elena's prediction proved correct. She returned to the barracks after dinner to find her belongings scattered across the floor. Her carefully maintained rifle had been disassembled, and someone had hidden the parts in various locations around the room. Her letters from home had been torn up and thrown in the trash. Elena stood in the doorway surveying the damage. Several other recruits were in the room, but they all suddenly became very interested in their own activities and avoided making eye contact with her. The message was clear. This was what happened to women who tried to compete in a man's world. Instead of getting angry or upset, Elena calmly began picking up her belongings. She methodically searched for all the parts of her rifle, reassembled it with practiced efficiency, and organized her gear neatly in her footlocker. The entire process took about an hour, during which time the other recruits watched her with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. When she was finished, Elena stood up and addressed the room in a clear, steady voice. "I know some of you don't think I belong here. Maybe you think that if you make my life difficult enough, I'll quit and go home. But I need you to understand something. I don't have a home to go back to. This is my home now, and this is my family. I'm not going anywhere." She paused and looked around the room, making eye contact with each person present. "I've never asked for special treatment, and I never will. All I want is the same chance you all have to prove myself. If you can't respect that, then at least respect the fact that we're all on the same side here." The room was completely silent. Some of the recruits looked ashamed. Others appeared thoughtful, and a few still seemed hostile. But Elena had made her point. She wasn't a victim who could be easily driven away. The next morning brought news that would change everything for the training unit. Sergeant Volkov gathered all the recruits in the main briefing room, his expression more serious than usual. "I've received word from command," he announced. "Due to increased enemy activity in the northern sector, this training program is being accelerated. Instead of 8 weeks, you have 4 more weeks to complete your certification. Those who don't meet the standards will be transferred to other units." A murmur of concern rippled through the room. The training had already been intense, and the thought of cramming twice as much material into half the time was daunting. Volkov continued. "This means that from now on, you'll be training as teams rather than individuals. Your success will depend not just on your own abilities, but on how well you work together and support each other." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Working as a team meant she would have to rely on the same people who had been trying to undermine her. It also meant that her success or failure would directly impact everyone else's chances of completing the program. As the recruits filed out of the briefing room, Elena could see the wheels turning in Kozlov's head. She had just become an even bigger problem for him. If she performed well, she would make his team look good, which would contradict his narrative about women being a liability. But if he sabotaged her performance, he would be sabotaging his own chances of success. For the first time since arriving at the training camp, Elena felt truly vulnerable. Individual excellence was something she could control, but teamwork required trust and cooperation from people who had already proven they didn't want her there. The next few weeks would test not just her shooting skills, but her ability to win over people who saw her as an enemy rather than an ally. The new team-based training format proved to be even more challenging than Elena had anticipated. The recruits were divided into squads of 6, and through what Elena suspected was not entirely random selection, she found herself grouped with Kozlov and most of his supporters. The only friendly face in her squad was Dmitry, the young recruit she had helped during the first week. Their first mission as a team was a complex exercise that required coordinated movement through rough terrain while maintaining communication and providing covering fire for each other. Each team member had a specific role, and Elena was assigned as the primary marksman, responsible for taking out long-range targets that threatened the squad's advance. The exercise began before dawn. Elena's squad moved through dense forest, communicating through hand signals and whispered commands. For the first hour, everything went smoothly. The team worked together efficiently, and Elena successfully eliminated several simulated enemy positions with precise shots that allowed her squadmates to advance safely. However, as they approached the halfway point of the exercise, Elena noticed that something was wrong. Kozlov, who was serving as the squad leader, began giving her instructions that didn't make tactical sense. He directed her to positions that offered poor visibility of the targets she was supposed to engage, and he seemed to be deliberately placing her where she couldn't provide effective support for the team. During one particularly crucial moment, Elena was ordered to move to a position behind a large rock formation that completely blocked her view of the area where the rest of the squad was advancing. From this position, she could hear gunfire and shouting, but she couldn't see what was happening or provide any assistance. "Kozlov, I can't see the targets from here," she radioed. "Request permission to move to higher ground." "Negative," came his response. "Stay in position and wait for orders." Elena watched helplessly as her squadmates struggled to advance without proper covering fire. Dmitry was pinned down by simulated enemy fire, and 2 other team members were having difficulty crossing an open area that Elena could have easily covered from a better position. Finally, unable to watch her team fail because of poor leadership, Elena made a decision that she knew might get her in trouble. She abandoned her assigned position and moved to a rocky outcrop that gave her a clear view of the entire battlefield. From this new position, Elena could see exactly what her team needed. She quickly identified and engaged 3 enemy positions that had been preventing her squadmates from advancing. Her accurate fire allowed Dmitry to escape his pinned position and enabled the rest of the team to complete their objective. The exercise ended successfully, but Elena knew there would be consequences for disobeying orders. As the squad gathered to discuss their performance, Kozlov's face was red with anger. "Petrov," he shouted, "you directly disobeyed my orders. In a real combat situation, that kind of insubordination could get people killed." Elena stood at attention, but her voice was firm when she replied, "Sir, in a real combat situation, following those orders would have gotten people killed. I had a clear shot at targets that were threatening our team, and I took action to protect my squadmates. You don't get to make that decision." Kozlov shot back. "I'm the squad leader, and you follow my orders whether you like them or not." The argument was interrupted by the arrival of Sergeant Volkov, who had been observing the exercise from a distance. He had seen everything that happened and had his own opinions about the squad's performance. "Interesting discussion," Volkov said calmly. "Kozlov, explain to me why you positioned your marksman in a location where she couldn't engage any targets." Kozlov stammered for a moment. I was testing her ability to follow orders under difficult circumstances." Volkov raised an eyebrow. By rendering your most accurate shooter completely useless during the most critical part of the mission? Sir, she disobeyed direct orders, Kozlov insisted. Yes, she did, Volkov agreed. And because she did, your team completed the exercise successfully instead of failing completely. In the real world, results matter more than rigid adherence to bad orders. The sergeant turned to address the entire squad. Leadership isn't about having people follow your commands blindly. It's about making decisions that give your team the best chance of success and survival. If your orders don't serve that purpose, then you're not leading. You're just exercising power for its own sake. Elena felt a surge of gratitude toward Volkov, but she also knew that his support would only make Kozlov more resentful. She was caught in an impossible situation: succeed and face increased hostility from her squad mates, or fail and confirm their prejudices about women in combat roles. The tension in Elena's squad continued to escalate over the following days. Kozlov became even more rigid in his leadership style, often giving Elena assignments that seemed designed to set her up for failure rather than maximize her contributions to the team. The other squad members began to take sides, with some supporting Kozlov's authority, and others quietly admiring Elena's skills and dedication. The breaking point came during a night training exercise that was designed to test the squad's ability to work together under extreme stress. The mission involved infiltrating a mock enemy compound and eliminating specific targets while avoiding detection. Elena was assigned to provide overwatch from a position outside the compound while the rest of the team moved in. Everything went wrong from the beginning. The squad's approach was sloppy and poorly coordinated. They triggered alarms early, alerting the defenders to their presence. Within minutes, the exercise had devolved into a chaotic firefight with simulated casualties mounting on both sides. From her overwatch position, Elena could see that her squad mates were trapped in a courtyard with no clear escape route. Enemy defenders had them surrounded, and it was only a matter of time before the exercise would be declared a failure. Elena tried to radio for permission to change positions and provide support, but her communications equipment had mysteriously malfunctioned. She suspected sabotage, but there was no time to investigate. Her squad mates were in trouble, and she was the only one who could help them. Making another split-second decision to disobey orders, Elena abandoned her overwatch position and moved closer to the compound. Using skills her grandfather had taught her about moving silently through hostile territory, she infiltrated the mock enemy positions and began systematically eliminating the defenders who had her squad mates pinned down. Her intervention turned the tide of the exercise. With the enemy defenders neutralized, her squad mates were able to escape the trap and complete their mission objectives. The exercise that had seemed destined for failure was transformed into a success. However, Elena's unauthorized actions had been observed by multiple instructors, and she knew she would face serious consequences. As the squad regrouped after the exercise, Kozlov was practically foaming at the mouth with rage. "This is the last time," he shouted. "I don't care how good a shot you are, Petrov. You're a liability to this team because you can't follow orders. I'm recommending that you be transferred to a different unit." The other squad members shifted uncomfortably. Even those who had supported Kozlov seemed uncertain about his extreme reaction. Dmitri spoke up hesitantly. "But sir, she saved us in there. Without her help, we would have failed the exercise completely." "That's not the point," Kozlov snapped. "Military units depend on discipline and chain of command. If everyone just does whatever they think is best, we have chaos instead of an army." Elena remained silent during this exchange, but inside she was preparing herself for the possibility that her time in the sniper program was coming to an end. She had known from the beginning that her success would threaten some people, but she had hoped that her skills and dedication would eventually win them over. Now it seemed that no amount of competence could overcome the prejudice and insecurity of those who saw her as an invader in their masculine domain. The morning after the failed night exercise, Elena was summoned to meet with the base commander, Colonel Mikhail Petrov. She had never met the colonel personally, but his reputation preceded him. He was known as a fair but demanding leader who had earned his position through years of combat experience rather than political connections. Elena knocked on the door of the colonel's office, her heart pounding with anticipation. She expected to be told that her time in the sniper program was over and that she would be transferred to a support role somewhere far from the front lines. "Enter," came a gruff voice from inside. Elena stepped into the office and stood at attention. Colonel Petrov was a man in his 50s with graying hair and the weathered face of someone who had spent years in harsh conditions. His desk was covered with reports and maps, and Elena noticed that several of them seemed to be related to recent enemy activities in the northern sector. "At ease, Petrov," the colonel said, looking up from his paperwork. "I've been reading some interesting reports about your performance in training." Elena remained standing straight but relaxed her posture slightly. "Yes, sir. According to Sergeant Volkov, you're one of the most naturally gifted marksmen he's ever trained. Your accuracy scores are consistently in the top 5%, and you've shown exceptional ability to perform under pressure." The colonel paused and fixed Elena with a steady gaze. "However, I've also received complaints about your tendency to disobey direct orders." "Sir, I only disobeyed orders when following them would have put my team at risk," Elena replied carefully. Colonel Petrov leaned back in his chair. "That's exactly what concerns me, soldier. Not the disobedience itself, but the fact that you felt it was necessary. Tell me, in your opinion, why were you given orders that you felt compelled to ignore?" Elena hesitated. She didn't want to directly criticize Kozlov, but she also knew that honesty was her only chance of staying in the program. "Sir, I believe that some members of my unit are more focused on proving that I don't belong here than on completing the mission successfully." "I see." The colonel made a note on a piece of paper. "And how do you think this situation should be resolved?" "I think I should be judged on my performance and my contribution to the team's success, not on whether some people are comfortable with my presence." Colonel Petrov nodded slowly. "A reasonable position. Let me share something with you, Petrov. 3 days ago, we received intelligence about increased enemy sniper activity in the northern mountains. They've been targeting our supply convoys and communication posts with devastating effectiveness. We've lost 12 soldiers in the past week alone." Elena felt a chill run through her. This was exactly the kind of situation that snipers were trained to handle. "The problem," the colonel continued, "is that our current sniper teams are either deployed elsewhere or lack the specific skills needed for mountain warfare in winter conditions. We need someone who can operate independently, adapt to changing situations, and make life-or-death decisions without waiting for orders from headquarters." Elena began to understand where this conversation was heading. "Based on your training performance and Sergeant Volkov's recommendations, I'm considering assigning you to a special mission in that sector. However, I need to know that you can work effectively as part of a team, even when that team includes people who may not initially trust or respect you. Sir, I believe I can prove that my value to any team outweighs any personal conflicts." Colonel Petrov stood up and walked to a large map mounted on the wall. The mission would involve embedding with an experienced reconnaissance unit led by Captain Viktor Romanov. Captain Romanov has specifically requested a sniper with mountain warfare experience, and he's not particularly concerned about whether that sniper is male or female. He's only interested in results. Elena felt a surge of hope. This was the opportunity she had been training for, a chance to prove herself in real combat conditions rather than training exercises. "However," the colonel continued, "before I can approve this assignment, I need to see how you perform in one final training exercise. This will be a comprehensive test involving multiple teams and complex objectives. Your performance in this exercise will determine not only whether you complete the sniper program, but whether you're ready for actual combat deployment." "I understand, sir. When does the exercise take place?" "Tomorrow morning." "And Petrov?" The colonel turned to face her directly. "This exercise will be observed by several senior officers, including Captain Romanov himself. This is your chance to show everyone what you're capable of, but it's also your last chance. Don't waste it." Elena left the colonel's office with mixed feelings of excitement and nervousness. She had been given an opportunity that most trainees could only dream of, but she also knew that the pressure would be enormous. Everything she had worked for would be decided in a single day. That evening, she spent extra time cleaning and preparing her equipment. She reviewed maps of the training area and practiced different shooting positions until her muscles ached. As she worked, several other recruits approached her. Dmitri was the first to speak. Elna, I heard about tomorrow's exercise. I wanted you to know that some of us are rooting for you. Thank you, Dmitri. That means a lot. Two other recruits, Alexei and Pavel, joined the conversation. They had initially been neutral toward Elena, but her consistent performance and dedication had gradually won their respect. We've been talking, Alexei said quietly, glancing around to make sure Kozlov wasn't nearby. What happened during the night exercise wasn't right. You saved our mission, and instead of getting credit, you're being treated like a troublemaker. Pavel nodded in agreement. Most of us know that you're the best shot in the program. Some people just can't handle that fact. Elena felt grateful for their support, but she also knew that tomorrow's test would ultimately be something she had to face alone. I appreciate your confidence in me. Just promise me that you'll focus on your own performance tomorrow. Don't let my situation affect your chances of success. As they talked, Elena noticed Kozlov watching them from across the room. His expression was unreadable, but she could sense his anger and frustration. He had been working for weeks to undermine her position, and now it seemed like his efforts were backfiring. Other recruits were beginning to see Elena as a valuable team member rather than a liability. The conversation was interrupted by Sergeant Volkov's arrival. "Lights out in 10 minutes, he announced. "Tomorrow is a big day for everyone, so get some rest." As the recruits prepared for bed, Volkov approached Elena. "A word of advice for tomorrow," he said quietly. "Don't try to prove anything to the people who have already made up their minds about you. Focus on showing the observers what you can do when you're allowed to do your job properly." Elena nodded. "Understood, Sergeant." "One more thing," Volkov added. "Captain Romanov is not like the officers you've dealt with so far. He's been in actual combat, and he's lost good soldiers to enemy snipers. If he thinks you can help prevent that from happening again, he won't care what anyone else thinks about your gender." That night, Elena lay awake thinking about everything that had led her to this moment. She thought about her father, who had taught her that courage wasn't the absence of fear but the willingness to act despite being afraid. She thought about her grandfather, who had shown her that skill and dedication could overcome almost any obstacle. Most of all, she thought about all the soldiers who might depend on her accuracy and judgment in the months to come. Tomorrow's exercise wasn't just about her personal success. It was about proving that she could be trusted with other people's lives. As she finally drifted off to sleep, Elena made a silent promise to herself and to the memory of her family. She would give everything she had to the final test, and she would show everyone that a woman could be just as deadly and reliable as any male sniper in the army. The final exercise began at dawn, with a comprehensive briefing that laid out the most complex scenario the recruits had faced so far. The training area covered 20 square kilometers of varied terrain, including forests, hills, and a mock village. Multiple teams would be operating simultaneously with different objectives that would sometimes conflict with each other. Elena found herself assigned to a mixed unit that included recruits from different squads. For the first time since team training began, she was not under Kozlov's direct command. Instead, their team leader was senior recruit Morozov, a quiet but competent soldier who had consistently performed well throughout the program. The observers were positioned at various points around the training area. Elena could see Colonel Petrov and several other officers she didn't recognize watching from a hillside command post. One of them, a lean man with sharp eyes and confident bearing, must be Captain Romanov. The scenario was complex and realistic. Elena's team was tasked with providing reconnaissance and sniper support for a simulated assault on the mock village, which was defended by instructors playing the role of enemy forces. At the same time, other teams would be conducting diversionary attacks and attempting to capture specific objectives. What made this exercise particularly challenging was that the teams were not given detailed coordination instructions. They would have to communicate with each other, share intelligence, and adapt their tactics based on changing conditions, just as they would in real combat. Elena was assigned as the primary sniper for her team, with the mission of eliminating high-value targets and providing overwatch for advancing infantry. Her position would be crucial to the success of the entire operation. As the teams moved out to their starting positions, Elena felt a sense of calm focus that she recognized from her best shooting days with her grandfather. All the stress and politics of the past weeks faded away, replaced by the simple clarity of having a job to do and the skills to do it well. Elena's team moved through the forest with practiced stealth, communicating through hand signals and staying alert for enemy patrols. The morning mist provided good concealment, but it also limited visibility for long-range shots. After 2 hours of careful movement, Elena's team reached their assigned overwatch position on a ridge overlooking the mock village. From this vantage point, Elena could see the entire battlefield and identify the positions of both friendly and enemy forces. Through her scope, Elena observed the simulated enemy defenders setting up their positions. She identified several key targets: a machine gun nest that commanded the main approach to the village, a sniper position in the church bell tower, and what appeared to be a command post in the largest building. Elena radioed her observations to the team leader and the other units. Her detailed intelligence reports helped the assault teams plan their approach and identify the threats they would face. The assault began with a diversionary attack on the eastern side of the village. As enemy defenders moved to counter this threat, Elena's team was supposed to support the main assault from the west. However, the plan quickly started to fall apart. The diversionary attack was detected earlier than expected, and the enemy response was more effective than anticipated. The main assault team found themselves pinned down by heavy fire before they could even reach the village perimeter. Elena watched through her scope as the situation deteriorated. Friendly forces were taking simulated casualties, and the mission was heading toward failure. The assault team leader was calling for help, but the supporting units were too far away to provide immediate assistance. "Elena, can you engage the machine gun position?" Morozov asked over the radio. Elena studied the target through her scope. The machine gun nest was well concealed and nearly 800 meters away. The shot would be challenging even under ideal conditions, and the morning mist was still affecting visibility. "I have a shot, but it's not guaranteed," Elena replied. "Distance is extreme and visibility is poor. Take it when you're ready," Morozov said. "The assault team needs that position eliminated." Elena adjusted her scope for the distance and wind conditions. She controlled her breathing and waited for a moment when the mist cleared slightly. The machine gun position became visible for just a few seconds, long enough for Elena to line up her shot and squeeze the trigger. The simulated enemy gunner was eliminated immediately. The machine gun position fell silent and the assault team was able to advance. But Elena's work was far from over. As the battle progressed, new threats emerged and she found herself engaging targets across the entire battlefield. Her accurate fire eliminated enemy snipers, disrupted command positions, and provided crucial support for friendly forces at several critical moments. The most challenging shot came when an enemy sniper in the bell tower began targeting the assault team leader. Elena could see the muzzle flash from the enemy position, but the sniper was well concealed and only exposed for brief moments. Elena waited patiently, watching the enemy sniper's pattern and timing. When he appeared for what would be his final shot, Elena was ready. Her bullet found its target just as the enemy sniper was about to eliminate the assault team leader. The exercise continued for 6 hours, with Elena's team providing overwatch and fire support for multiple phases of the operation. By the time the final objectives were secured, Elena had successfully engaged 14 different targets at ranges from 300 to 900 meters. As the teams regrouped for the after-action review, Elena felt cautiously optimistic about her performance. She had done everything that was asked of her, and had contributed significantly to the mission's success. The debriefing was conducted by Colonel Petrov and the visiting officers. They reviewed each phase of the operation, discussing what had worked well and what could be improved. When they reached the discussion of sniper support, Captain Romanov spoke for the first time. "The overwatch position provided exceptional support throughout the operation," he said, looking directly at Elena. 14 confirmed eliminations, all at extended range under difficult conditions. The machine gun position elimination was particularly impressive. That shot prevented the entire assault from failing. Kozlov, who had been part of one of the assault teams, looked uncomfortable as the praise was directed toward Elena. Several other recruits glanced between Elena and Kozlov, clearly recognizing the irony of the situation. Colonel Petrov nodded in agreement. The sniper support was indeed exceptional. It demonstrated exactly the kind of independent thinking and adaptability that we need in real combat situations. As the formal debriefing concluded, Captain Romanov approached Elena directly. "Recruit Petrov, I'd like to speak with you privately." Elena followed the captain to a quiet area away from the other recruits. Up close, she could see that he was younger than she had initially thought, probably in his early 30s, but his eyes held the weight of someone who had seen considerable combat. "I've been watching your performance throughout this exercise," Captain Romanov said. "I've also reviewed your entire training record and spoken with Sergeant Volkov about your capabilities." Elena waited silently for him to continue. "I'm going to be direct with you, Petrov. I have a mission coming up that requires a sniper with exactly your skill set. Mountain warfare, extended range engagements, and the ability to operate independently under pressure. I don't care about the politics or the personality conflicts you've been dealing with here. I only care about whether you can hit your targets when it matters." "I can, sir," Elena replied without hesitation. "I believe you can," Captain Romanov said, "but I need to know that you understand what you're volunteering for. This won't be a training exercise. The people you'll be shooting at will be shooting back, and they won't be using simulated ammunition. Are you prepared for that reality?" Elena thought about her father and all the innocent people who had died in the war. She thought about the soldiers who had been killed by enemy snipers in the northern mountains. She thought about the responsibility she would be taking on and the lives that might depend on her accuracy. "Yes, sir. I'm ready." 6 months later, Elena crouched in a snow-covered hide overlooking a mountain pass in the northern sector. The temperature was 20 degrees below freezing, and the wind howled constantly through the rocky peaks. She had been in position for 14 hours, waiting for the convoy that intelligence reports said would pass through this area. Captain Romanov lay beside her, scanning the valley below through his binoculars. Over the past months, Elena had proven herself as an invaluable member of his reconnaissance unit. Her accuracy in mountain conditions had saved dozens of friendly lives and disrupted numerous enemy operations. The unit that had initially doubted her capabilities now depended on her completely. The soldiers who served with Elena had learned that when she said she could make a shot, she made it. When she said a position was too dangerous to approach, they listened. Her judgment had become as trusted as her marksmanship. "Movement in the valley," Romanov whispered. "Convoy approaching from the east." Elena adjusted her scope and studied the approaching vehicles. 3 trucks and 2 escort vehicles, exactly as the intelligence report had described. But something was wrong with the spacing and movement patterns. "Sir, that's not a supply convoy," Elena said quietly. "Those vehicles are moving too fast and staying too close together. Supply trucks would be more spread out and moving more slowly on these mountain roads." Romanov looked more carefully through his binoculars. "You're right. What do you think we're looking at?" Elena continued her observation. Through her scope, she could see armed figures in the vehicles and what appeared to be sophisticated radio equipment. "I think it's a command unit, sir. Possibly someone important. This changed everything. Their original mission was to disrupt supply lines, but capturing or eliminating enemy command personnel would be much more valuable." "Can you take out the lead vehicle's engine block?" Romanov asked. "If we can stop the convoy without killing everyone immediately, we might be able to capture someone with useful intelligence." Elena studied the shot carefully. The lead vehicle was moving at approximately 40 kilometers per hour and was currently 600 meters away. She would need to time the shot perfectly to hit the engine block rather than the passenger compartment. "I can make the shot, but I'll need to wait until they reach the straight section of road ahead. Too much movement right now." They waited as the convoy navigated the winding mountain road. Elena controlled her breathing and tracked the lead vehicle's movement through her scope. When the convoy reached the straight section, she made minute adjustments for wind and distance. The shot was perfect. The lead vehicle's engine exploded in a shower of steam and smoke, and the truck coasted to a stop in the middle of the road. The other vehicles immediately stopped as well, their occupants jumping out and taking defensive positions. But instead of the confusion and panic that Romanov had expected, the enemy response was quick and professional. These were clearly experienced soldiers, not supply convoy guards. "Elena, we may have stirred up a hornet's nest," Romanov said, watching enemy soldiers deploy with practiced efficiency. Through her scope, Elena observed the enemy positions and identified several immediate threats. "Sir, I count at least 20 personnel, and they're setting up what looks like a communications array. I think we found something bigger than we expected." The enemy forces began advancing up the hillside toward Elena's position. Their movement was coordinated and deliberate. suggesting that they knew exactly where the shot had come from. "Time to go," Romanov said, beginning to pack his equipment. But Elena remained in position, continuing to observe the enemy through her scope. "Wait, sir, I see something." In the confusion around the disabled convoy, Elena had spotted a figure that made her heart race. Through her scope, she could see a man in an officer's uniform directing the deployment of troops. The insignia on his uniform indicated that he was a high-ranking enemy commander. "Sir, we have a priority target, enemy colonel, directing operations from the second vehicle." Romanov looked through his binoculars and confirmed Elena's observation. "That's Colonel Volkov. Not our Sergeant Volkov, but the enemy commander who's been orchestrating the attacks on our supply lines. If we can eliminate him, it could change the entire situation in this sector. The shot would be incredibly difficult." The target was 800 meters away, partially concealed behind vehicles and surrounded by bodyguards who were constantly moving. Elena would have only a brief window when the target was exposed, and she would need to take the shot while enemy forces were advancing toward her position. "Elena, that's an almost impossible shot under these conditions," Romanov said. "And if you miss, our position will be completely compromised." Elena studied the target carefully. The enemy colonel was moving between vehicles, occasionally stopping to give orders or examine maps. She identified a pattern in his movement that would give her a brief opportunity. "Sir, I can make this shot, but I need 60 seconds to line it up properly." Romanov understood the implications. 60 seconds would put the advancing enemy forces dangerously close to their position. If Elena missed or if the shot didn't eliminate the target immediately, they would likely be overrun. "Do it," Romanov said. "I'll buy you the time you need." Elena focused entirely on the target, blocking out the sounds of approaching enemy soldiers and Romanov's defensive preparations. She watched the enemy colonel's movement pattern, timing his stops and calculating the exact moment when he would be most exposed. The moment came when the colonel stepped away from his vehicle to get a better view of his troops' advance. For approximately 3 seconds, he would be completely exposed and stationary. Elena controlled her breathing, made final adjustments for wind and distance, and gently squeezed the trigger. The shot was perfect. The enemy colonel dropped immediately, and the advancing troops stopped their assault to deal with the crisis in their command structure. "Target eliminated," Elena reported calmly. "Recommend immediate withdrawal while enemy forces are regrouping." As they moved away from their position, Romanov looked at Elena with a combination of respect and amazement. That was an extraordinary shot under impossible conditions. "I've never seen anything like it." Elena simply nodded and continued moving. She had proven everything she needed to prove, not just to Romanov but to herself. The young woman who had been mocked and dismissed by her fellow trainees had become one of the most effective snipers in the army. 3 weeks later, Elena received a commendation for her actions during the mountain operation. The elimination of the enemy colonel had indeed disrupted enemy operations in the northern sector, saving countless friendly lives. But more importantly, Elena had earned something that couldn't be given by any official award: the complete trust and respect of her fellow soldiers. The men and women who served with her knew that when Elena Petrov was providing overwatch, they could focus on their own jobs without worrying about threats she could eliminate. In the end, it wasn't speeches or arguments that had convinced people that women belonged in combat roles. It was simply the undeniable evidence of Elena's competence, dedication, and effectiveness under the most challenging conditions imaginable. The woman they had once laughed at had become the soldier they couldn't imagine operating without. And when new missions came up in dangerous territory, Captain Romanov's response was always the same: "We don't move without her."